I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Well, here we see our quiz 3 results. The number of A's, B's, and C's was a lot lower than in previous, and the number of D's and F's was larger, with mean of 68.2 and median of 68.5. There was a built-in 5-point curve on the quiz. There were 105 points possible, and we did have a student that got the maximum 105 and the minimum was 20. So if looking at the distribution, you can see that the performance wasn't very great on this quiz. And so I took a deep dive into the questions, the answers that were given, and plus the knowledge of what students have done in the past on this quiz. And this performance was way below normal. I also consider giving curves on quizzes when it's appropriate. There's already a 5-point quiz curve on the quiz, but I look at the maximum score that was received. I looked at were there any questions where the number of students that got it wrong was excessive, and other factors as well. And in this case, I'm sticking with the 5-point curve that was built into the quiz. I can't really justify adding any more. So anyway, let me move on. What I'm going to do is look at the 6 questions on the quiz that everybody got. There were other questions that were from question banks, but these were the 6 questions that everybody had the same question. One of these questions, you had different numbers, but you had the same question. So let me move ahead. So this question here was asking you to calculate the payments for a car loan. And this is one of the fundamental things you should be able to do after studying chapter 4 and chapter 6, where we're looking at uniform costs. And so this is a simple payment function with 6% annual interest. So since these are monthly payments, we have to use the monthly interest. And so I is 0.005. We have 60 periods, 60 months. And we are financing or borrowing 20,000 out of the 25. And so the loan comes out to be 386. The payments are $386 a month. Now, let me say, looking at the answers that students gave, I get to see all the answers, of course, and a number of students didn't treat this as monthly payments. They looked at this as annual payments, and so they answered with a number of what the annual amount would be. And so that was wrong. These are monthly payments on the car loan. So anyway, let me move on. I don't want to dwell on each one of these too long. This was a situation where you have 5 cash flows and you're asked to come out with what's the equivalent for this. And so that means you need to somehow convert these 5 cash flows. And if you looked at the cash flow diagram that's on the screen, if you look at the let me move ahead here. Cash flow diagram that's on the screen, you can see that we have some positive cash flows and then one negative, and we have to find the equivalent uniform series to that. And so the easiest way to do it is to find the present value of the 5 cash flows. That's the value, equivalent value at time 0, and then use that to spread out into a uniform series over the 5 years. And with Excel, and I just drew a little Excel window in here, put in those cash values, you can use the net present value function to find the present value of those, which makes this P here, P prime I called it, 3633. Then treat that as a lump sum at time 0 and find the payment over those 5 periods at 10%, and you get 958. So 13 students got this right, and 60%, well, 63% got it wrong. And so it looks like that there's some difficulty in understanding how to convert a series, any kind of a series of cash flows of some kind, how to convert those into a uniform series. That is a fundamental aspect of chapter 4 and chapter 6. This was another problem very similar in that you already have one uniform series, an annual benefit of 2,000, and you have a cost up front of 7,500, and you're asked to find the equivalent uniform annual worth. So the annual worth is the uniform annual benefit minus the uniform annual cost. The EUAB is already given as 2,000. So how do you take this 7,500 and convert that into a uniform series? Well, you do that with the payment function, and that is, or you can, that's the payment function up there. It doesn't say payment, but that's what it is. And that's minus 1722. And so you just sum those together and you get that the equivalent uniform annual worth then is a positive 277.94. And 23 students got that correct. Now we're getting into a situation where we're given a cost at time 0, we're given a salvage value, we're giving a uniform benefit of 12,000, a uniform cost of 2,000, and we want to find the net present worth. This is a classic chapter 5 problem. This is as basic as it gets, where you've got some uniform series, you've got a future value for salvage, an upfront cost. What is the net present worth of all this? And so you can use the present value function to find the you can use one present value function to find the present value of both of these uniform series and the salvage value. In the argument for the present value, you have the interest rate of 0.12, 10 periods, and you can actually let Excel do the math and take 12,000 minus 2,000 as the argument for what the payment is, and then 8K is the future value, and then subtract, you already have a present value here of 50, and so with one Excel factor, and you can actually do this problem and get the answer of 9,078. And you could, by the way, you can do this with factor notation, but anyway, the answer is $9,078, and 19 students got this right, a little over half the class. Now, here we have another problem that's similar, except for we're not asking for the present value, net present value. which is a chapter 5 question. This is now a chapter 6 question. We're asking for the equivalent uniform annual worth, or EUAB minus EUAC. We already have two uniform series, the 4,000 benefit and the 3,000 cost. So we don't have to do anything to convert those into uniform series, but we've got a present value of 10K and a future value of 1,000. Well, we can use the payment function and plug in minus 10K and for the present value and plus 1,000 for the future value, and find out what their equivalent series is. And then it turns out to be a negative. And so you add that up and you have to put a negative in front of it to turn a negative number into a positive. So this comes out to be negative $564.71. Now, what is concerning to me is 22 students got this right. Let me go to the next slide. This was practice quiz question. This was a practice free quiz question. You'll notice that it's identical in terms of numbers, except for instead of 7 years, it's 10 years. Excuse me, it's 10% and 10 years instead of 5% and 7 years. So it's the same problem. You would just need to change the interest rate and the number of years and then get the right answer. And yet 37% of the class, over a third of the class, didn't do that, yet almost everybody got this question right on the practice quiz. So anyway, now you had a homework problem, 645, where you had similar problem to what those ones we just solved. You had a present value, you had a future value, you had some equivalent uniform annual costs, and you had to come up with the EUAW. You had to find, or the EUAC, and so it was very similar to the problem we just worked. And so between the practice quiz problem and this homework problem, you should have understood how to do that problem quickly and correctly. And so here's another one, very similar, but this is calculating the net present worth, very similar to one of the previous questions, except for you all had different numbers. And there was a cost, a benefit, an upfront cost, an upfront cost, uniform benefit, uniform cost, and a salvage value or future cost. I'm not going to go through the numbers, but 19 students got this correct. So by looking at these problems and how many people got them right, how many people got them wrong, it looks to me like about half the class seems to know what's going on, and about half the class hasn't mastered it at all. And I think part of the problem is that some of you aren't doing the homework. You're getting the answers from somebody else and you're putting them in. Yeah, you can do that, I guess. But you don't learn anything, and that's obvious here. So if you want to learn this stuff, the only way you're going to learn it is by actually working a few problems yourself from beginning to end, complete. and until you understand how to do them. So anyway, this chapters 3 and 4 are the core concepts. Chapters 5 and 6, present worth and uniform annual worth analysis, are the two workhorse analysis techniques. You're learning more techniques after that, but these are the workhorse techniques and the ones you're going to use the most on your project. So you need to make sure you understand what you missed on this quiz. And let me add, there were more than usual, there were students that didn't do well on the practice quiz this time. And on some of these questions, there were like 8 or 9 students that didn't get one of those, a question right on the practice quiz, even though they had up to 6 attempts available. But nobody contacted me to find out how to solve them if they couldn't get it. If you're not getting a homework problem or a practice quiz problem, you can't figure it out, you've tried multiple times, and maybe you don't have somebody that can help you find out what's wrong. That's what office hours and emails for. And so nobody's contacting me. So I think that a lot of people are just getting the answers, putting them in, and then hoping for the best. Well, that's not what you're here for. All right. You really need to understand this stuff. So anyway, that's enough of my pontificating, and I am going to shut this down.